Hello and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I'm Renee and I read a lot. Today I thought I would go over my first half of the year reading stats. So from January to June, now that we've reached like the halfway point, I thought it'd be interesting to see where I'm at in terms of like books read versus how many I wanted to read, pages, whatever, and then go over like the notable books that I've read this year. And honestly, I've been looking at them and it's less than I thought. Normally, I feel like I've got so many that I'm like, let's go. And I give a lot of 5 stars, but ones that are like notable, that have stayed with me, that I still think about all the time, is less than normal this year at this point. And I wonder if it's like an oversaturation in my brain, like if there's some psychological, like once you read so many books, like your brain just is like, you know, I feel like that happens sometimes. Come here. What are you doing? What are you doing? Look, we match. Stormy, you look like mommy, baby. Do you want to go or do you want to sit here? You want to sit here while I talk? Ow, she's like clawing into me. Okay, yeah, there you go. Oh, it's like 1,000,000 degrees. And I would turn on the air conditioning, but it's super noisy, so it wouldn't be great when you're recording a video. Anyway, okay, yeah, let's get into it. Total books read so far this year is 132, and it's really easy to see where that would put me at the end of the year if I keep this up, because you just have to multiply it by 2, so 164. Jesus Christ, 264. Can you stop? What are you doing? What are you doing? She's like, I can't stop. I have to bother you as much as possible. So 264, which is a lot of books considering that originally I made my Goodreads like goal for this year, 150, but we're almost there. So might have to set a new goal. Maybe I'll set 250. I don't know. I don't like being behind on my Goodreads. So I always set my goal low, or in my brain what I think is realistic. And then I like to just smash through those expectations, because once you've given me a goal, I have to reach that goal. Like I have to get there. So I'm like driven, let's read 150. And then I don't know what happens once I reach it. Is there a second interloper? What? I know. He always sits on my shoulder like this all the time, all day, every day. Because he's just a little baby boy. He said, I gotta go. I got stuff to do. He's got really important household tasks that he's doing the laundry for me today. It's been really backed up, so it's about time. So, 132 books. Which month did I read the least? You might want to know. I don't know why you would, but I'm going to tell you. It was January and February. But I kind of think it should be January if we were going to pick, because at least in February, it's a significantly shorter month. So I probably would have read more had February been given like at all the same number of days as the rest of the months. But regardless, in both of those months, I only read 17 books. The most amount of books that I read was in March. So that's very interesting that it goes least, most, and then I kind of like average out. In March, I read 27 books, and I don't really know what that could be, except for the fact that I was on spring break from graduate school. But like in January and in May, I've been graduated, so your guess is as good as mine. Pages wise, I read 40,130, which is a lot of pages. That doesn't seem like a real number to me. 40,130. And I guess because like it can average anywhere from like 10 to 500 pages in a day, that it doesn't feel like within 100 and I don't know how many days, 80 something, I should have been able to read 40,000 plus, but that's how math works, I guess. You would think I would know, but I do not. The most pages, not the most books, but the most pages was in June with 8,443. So that is also interesting to me, because that suggests I was just reading shorter books in March, which maybe, and a lot of really long books in June, which again, maybe. And then I read the least amount of pages in February, which does track because it's the shortest month, again, by a lot. And for what reason, I literally have no idea. 5,309 pages. So a difference of 3,000 pages between February, a short month when I was moving. That was the month I moved, and I was in grad school, and June, where I go to the beach and I read every day. So it's a clear difference. My average star rating overall was a 4.30, which is pretty high. I think one of my goals for the next half of the year is to make that more realistic, because while that suggests that I read a lot of like really hard hitting books that just like get to me, I was having trouble pulling them out to like make notable books. That's going to be one of my goals for the next half of the year, is to try and be more realistic with my ratings. So then for the next half of the year, again, my Goodreads goal was 150 books, but I'm going to hit that pretty soon. I think I'm already at 135. So I think I'm going to do 250. And I don't think that that's ridiculous. That might change as I get closer. And because you're going to have to follow along with Renee's crazy brain here for a second. So step inside my world. Welcome. It's chaotic in here, but it'll make sense once I explain it. I am a crazy person, and I take the cover of the book and I find an image of it online and I scale it appropriately to be 2.25 inches in height and 1.5 inches in width. And then I print two of them, one for here and one for its little book page. And then once I finish the book, I glue it into my bookshelf and I glue it onto the page. Last year, I originally had a goal of 100 books and I hit that in like August or something. So then I decided in my brain I was going to make it 150. I don't think I ever formally upped it on Goodreads. I just was like, okay, 150. But then I started getting closer. I realized that all of the bookshelf pages that I had allotted would actually end really perfectly if I had read 180 books, because there's 9 books per thing, 18 per 2 things. Things in this case, obviously being pages. So it ended like really miraculously, because I kind of had to guess how many bookshelf pages to give myself. It ended exactly 180. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do 180 books, right? Because I'm not gonna stop like mid-book. So in my brain, I'm thinking 250, but 250 is not a multiple of 9. 270 is a multiple of 9. 243 is a multiple of 9, but I don't think I even want it to be a multiple of 9. I want it to be a multiple of 18, because I want to finish on the second page. So the closest that I could get to that would be 254. Does that sound right? 252. The closest I could get to that would be 252, which I don't like. I like 270 better. And I haven't counted out how many pages I have allotted for bookshelves before the books start. And because I don't want to go over that either, because I don't want to have to put my bookshelf on pages that don't, aren't one after the other, aren't consecutive. So now that I've taken you through that, my tentative goal is around 250. So whether that's 252 or then the next bracket after that would be 270, I don't know. And I'm afraid to set a goal as high as 270, because that means I have catching up to do, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is intimidating. And at some point, I probably should get a job, and then I probably won't be able to spend all day just sitting on the couch reading. So is it feasible? Realistically, I have no idea. But based on my past trends, I have gotten faster at reading at the end of the year, for God knows why. Maybe it's more, your guess is as good as mine. And yeah, so that's where I'm at in terms of my reading goal. So I will now tell you some notable books that I read this year. And that doesn't mean that they were released this year or that there's any relevance to me having read them this year, just that I did read them this year and I really like them and I think you should give them a chance too. I'm not going to talk about the ones that I didn't like as much because I don't feel like being negative today. Today is a positive day. Positive affirmations only today, and only positivity out in the world. So positive books that I read this year. And I'm going in order of when I read them because I tried to organize them and that was too complicated. But I did separate them, fiction and nonfiction. So we'll start with fiction. Notable books, of course, I'm going to start with anything by Jane Austen. I reread Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Persuasion, Mansfield Park, Northanger Abbey. The only one I think I didn't reread this year was Sense and Sensibility because I finished it at the end of last year. They're timeless. I love them. 12 out of 10. If you haven't read Pride and Prejudice since high school, what are you doing? You should go back and redo it. And then you'll probably want to read the rest of them. And my favorite of all of them is definitely Emma. So If you haven't read Emma, I would read Emma. I really liked it. It's really good. That's all I have to say. One I don't see a lot is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I loved this book. I think about it all the time. If you don't know, William Shakespeare had a son named Hamnet, not Hamlet, but Hamnet, and he died from the plague. Obviously a huge tragedy, but this book puts everything in like a really interesting light. It's kind of told from his wife's perspective. I would very much check that out. That was really, really like historical fiction. Really made me read Hamlet. I read Hamlet again after in a completely different lens, and it was so captivating. I loved it, and I don't see it recommended anywhere, and I don't know why. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. Fantastic. I loved that. Very found family, very witchy, very kind of October vibes if you wanted to save it for then, but I thought it was so cute and easy read, and I think about it all the time, and I loved it. 12 out of 10. In terms of more fantasy vibes, Scorpica by J.R. McAllister. It's not a completed series, and I've only read the first book, and it's right there, so it's actually right out of view for you. But I do have the second one coming in a kind of unusual manner. I ordered it to a friend's house who's coming to Italy. So I will maybe update that once I've read the second one. But the first one was very promising. It's a matriarchal society of fantasy, and there's a lot of really different and interesting elements, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I never see it talked about anywhere, and I don't know why, because I really enjoyed it. Maybe because it's not finished, maybe because there's only one book out, but I would give it a chance, maybe. If you want to wait until it's completed, I don't know how long that's going to be, because now there's the 2 books out, even though I've only read the 1, but it was good. It was really good. I really liked it. One that I don't really know how to class, like I don't know what the genre would be besides just like contemporary fiction with maybe kind of like a dark humor, satirical twist, is Carnality by Lena Wolf. I bought it in person at a bookstore on the recommendation of the bookseller. And when I read it, there was like maybe 50 reviews on Goodreads, and I didn't know what to expect. And I don't know if it's gotten more popular by now, but when I read it, I absolutely loved it. When I read it, it was like pretty different from anything else that I'd ever read, like a nun on a crazy talk show who goes out to murder people kind of vibes. If you like contemporary, kind of dark, humored books, you're gonna love it. I would check it out. I thought it was so good. I don't know why I've never seen that one talked about either. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. That's like science fiction found fantasy. Also, I really loved that. I think about it all the time. A crew on a spaceship made up of different species, interplanetary species, has to take a really long trip for a really big payout, and it was really, really good. I thought it was really good. I read that when I was like in my space theme era, and I don't regret it at all. Following that was The Martian by Andy Weir. I loved Project Hail Mary, and so I went back and read The Martian. Obviously, I've seen the movie whenever it came out in like 2013. I loved the book too. The book really surprised me because I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but it's funny and it's got science and engineering, so your girl was like, I'm in. And I have Artemis, his other book, Andy Weir's other book, ready to go. But Project Hail Mary and The Martian, I loved. Fantastic. Would definitely recommend. I'd recommend them to anybody. But if you like science and you like funny books, you're going to love it. Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This one's a little controversial. Some people don't like it. Some people were like really hated it. I loved it. It's dark and gothic, and it's definitely not like the tamest of all books or like the most PG rated of all books. And I think that's maybe what people like, they go in not understanding, but it's very dark and gothic and it was very interesting. Like, I couldn't put it down. I loved it. On a more lighter note, Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center. This is like a romance/contemporary novel that literally reads like a memoir. Like, you could think you are reading somebody's memoir when you're reading it, but it was fantastic. It was probably my favorite like romance book that I read this year, and I don't even know if I would classify it totally as a romance, but the ending literally had me in tears and chills, and I cried and I laughed and I loved the whole book, so fantastic. Pierre Nasty by Susanna Clark. I have started seeing this more, and I actually saw this in an Italian bookstore and I was so tempted to pick it up. Very liminal space vibes. I don't think like the twist is super like I didn't even know it was supposed to be a twist. People are like, oh, the twist is so obvious. Yeah, I think that was the point. I don't know if I can describe why I liked this one so much as I just did. And I, again, thought it was unlike a lot of things that I've read because I don't feel like the sort of liminal space aspect of science fiction is as explored in popular literature as I think it could be. It's very explored in like what I've seen on YouTube and stuff, and maybe that says more about my recommendations than what's generally out there, but I think it's a really interesting format for literature to explore as well, and I'm excited for more books like that. Another classic, Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. This one is it's a classic for a reason, and I think it hits harder if you've been in the military. I actually, when I first read it, I was in college, and I was like, I don't really know if I understand this book as much as I should. And then I read it again this year, and it became my favorite book like of all time. And I had highlighted almost the whole book because of how poignant I thought it was. And it's satirical, and then it gets really real, and the way that he just really accurately captures military life is outstanding. Like, that's one of those World War II novels that you don't expect to hit because everybody tells you it's really funny, and it is really funny at first, and then at the end it gets really like dark and real, and I loved it. I have no notes. Fantastic. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. If you've ever struggled with the Fig Tree Paradox by Sylvia Plath, where she's like, oh my god, there's all this stuff that I could do or I want to do, and I could do something if I just got up and picked one of the figs that represents one of the life paths, but because I can't decide, I'm gonna do none of it. The Midnight Library kind of explores that paradox really well, in my opinion. I was having one of those days where I was having like a fig tree paradox mental breakdown, and I picked it up and not knowing what it was about, and it was really there for me when I needed it, and I think about it all the time as a result. In terms of another romance book that I think was one of my favorites of the year, but really this says a lot about me as well, is Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. Definitely, before you read it, if you've heard nothing about it, you really need to check the trigger warnings, and you need to check everything about it because it is so good. The writing is so good. I literally couldn't put it down. I was hooked on that book, but I realize that is a concerning thing, that is not something I should be admitting on the internet, but here we are. I loved it. It was one of my favorite books of the year, but again, I don't agree with it, and nobody stalk me. I'm not saying I want to be stalked. I'm happily married. I just really liked that book in particular. So sue me, but I loved it. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book has gotten a lot of hype, and I read it, and I think it should get more hype. It was fantastic. I literally laughed, I cried. I don't relate to it exactly because I think it's it's a coming of age story for like Generation X characters. And I'm like late millennial. I don't think I would fit into Gen Z, but I don't really feel like I fit with millennial or Gen Z. I feel like I kind of fit with both. But in my birth year, I'm definitely late millennial. But if you like video games or if you don't, if you like video games, I think it'll hit a lot harder. But even if you don't, I still think like the story and the writing is so poignant that it's worth the read. It was really good. And it's one of those books where I don't even think the main characters are all that likable, or I don't really agree with their decisions, but the writing is done in such a way where I can see why everybody made those choices. And I liked the book so much anyway that it just man, it was good. It was really good. I think about it all the time. And it literally makes me want to write a book about my experience as a gamer because I'm a giant nerd. The War of Lost Hearts series by Carissa Broadbent. I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about this again. This one really stood out to me as one of my favorite series of this year. The books are all very long, but I finished them all in 1 or 2 days because I couldn't put them down. And I'm reading her other series right now, the Crowns of Nyaxia series. And I, again, can't put it down. And I'm actually thinking about it right now because I want to go be reading that instead of recording this video. But I put on all my makeup to do headshots to look for jobs. So I figured I wasn't going to just sit around here and waste it. I was going to record the video, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that you should read The War of Lost Hearts. It's fantasy, like romance fantasy, but has more plot. Like, I wouldn't classify it as romance fantasy because it's more plot focused than romance focused, but it still has a big romance element. So both. Fantastic. I think about it all the time. 5 out of 5 stars. The Elements of Cadence Duology by Rebecca Ross. I also talk about this all the time, and I'm not done talking about it. I still think everybody needs to go read it. Yeah, it still stays with me. I think about it literally every day. So, and I picked up more of Rebecca Ross's books to try because I normally don't do that, but it was so good. I said, you know what? Put them in my cart. I'm gonna do it today. Sorry, that was so weird of me. Carrie Soto is back, and Everything Else by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read Evelyn Hugo and Her Seven Husbands or whatever a while ago. I wasn't that impressed, but this year I've read Daisy Jones and the Six, Malibu Rising, and Carrie Soto is back. And Carrie Soto's Back is literally one of my favorite books that I've read this year. Like, I was so blown away. Maybe because I identify a little bit too much with the like perfectionist, has to be the best at everything type trope, but it really it hit like a really fast tennis serve. Because is it obvious I don't know anything about tennis? Anyway, it's good whether or not you know anything about tennis, so definitely check that one out. The final fiction book I pulled out is the Locked Tomb series, the one that starts with Gideon the Ninth by Casman Muir. Futuristic, science fiction-y, kind of fantasy vibe story that every time you read a book, you get to the end and you're like, it took me a while to get into, but once I was into, I was into. And each book is really, really different, and I really liked that series as a whole. And it's not finished, but I am excited for when it finishes, and I have that in the forefront of my mind of like, I want to read the next in the Locked Tomb series. So I would recommend that one as well. And then that's it for fiction. One second. Leo, what are you doing? Hello? You're so weird. Yeah, my cat's being so cute. Why don't you come be cute on camera? He's shy. In the nonfiction section, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is a memoir. It's right here. It's fantastic. I would highly recommend reading it if you haven't already. It's, yeah, she's a great actress, but she's an even better writer, so good for her. I'll definitely be reading whatever else she puts out. By The Hidden Culture, History, and Science of Bisexuality by Julia Shaw. This one I loved for, it's very validating. Someone's playing with my camera stand. By someone, I mean Leo. Come here. Stop being the drama king and just come sit. But yes, I thought it was very well researched, very well written, very well done. The only critique I have of it is that it's really focused on like feminine presenting bisexual people. And there's not a lot on masculine ones, but I think that that's more of a critique on society and studies and stuff and less a critique on the book. But I really liked it. It's really interesting if you're into that kind of thing. White Tears, Brown Scars, How White Feminism Betrays Women of Color by Ruby Hamad. That was also a fantastic read. It definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things that white women do white women or white people do that take away from the experiences or lives of people of color. And I think that that's something that I feel like, at least in a lot of feminist literature, gets missed a lot, is the harm that we can be doing to other women without even noticing it. So that was definitely something very poignant and something that I thought was definitely a must read and worth a read. In the name of more feminist literature, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Absolutely fantastic. I literally highlighted entire chapters and I think about it all of the time. But yeah, I would 100% recommend it. It's one of those books that I think maybe every woman should read if you are interested at all in feminist literature. I think that one is a really, really interesting place to start and unlocks like a higher state of mind for you. And then finally, for my last nonfiction one that I kind of pulled out of here was Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. It's one of those books that's on like the most banned book lists, and therefore I think everybody should read it, because if they're banning it, you should read it because you should know what they're banning, because if they're banning it, it means that they don't want you to read it, and that should make you want to read it even more. So your banned book lists are doing the exact opposite. It's just driving me to purchase these books instead. That's my little rant. Anywho, it's a comic style book, so it's very easy to read, and I really like how that comic is juxtaposed with this like seriousness of the message. So really would recommend that one. It's another one that you could like use to get your Goodreads list higher without sacrificing a lot of time, but it's still very worth the read and the time that you put into it, and I think it was fantastic. So anyway, those are the most notable books that I've read in the first half of this year, and I'm excited to see what the second half of the year brings. As always, leave any book recommendations that you have down below so that I can check them out. Thank you for watching the video. Please like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.